Hello, this is a sequel to my two vids on the South African phenomenon of farm murders. That is the murders of Boer families in South Africa by murder and terror gangs. Um, Now, there's this widespread belief among the Boer and black and community and the English community in South Africa that at the end of Mandela's life that there are plans by certain extreme factions of the ANC which revolve mostly around the ANC Youth League of this plan to destroy the whites in South Africa, and there was a couple of seeming military style exercises with these groups over the last few years, with Johannesburg being cut off, and you can find out more about this specifically from a YouTube user called White African 78 or Ronaldo, Grim Ronaldo is another good YouTube user who covers this subject. But in my last two videos on South Africa, I spoke specifically about what positive steps can we take for the Boers to become independent from ANC Africa. South Africa. Now, the reason why I came to this conclusion that this is probably the only way that the Boers as a culture, which is different from that of the Dutch in Europe, and because the Boers were as a people were forged together in South Africa from elements of people who have come from Europe, but their experience that formed them as a nation is African. It is in the contest between themselves and the Zulu and Xhosa, and the melting pot of English, Dutch, Germans, French, even some Portuguese, have mixed together over the time and formed this distinctive culture. Which I suppose in the West we would say is a little bit like the settler culture of the American Wild West, and I think there's every possibility that South Africa the Boers in South Africa could adopt a American style constitutional republic system or a social democratic model like the EU has. Although their main independence movement at the moment is dominated by the AWB, which is a very right-leaning organisation. But what could, if the Boers had a central bank, their own currency, and they could do this as an autonomous region within South Africa, it would effectively give them independence, right? Because if you control a nation's money supply, you then dictate its fiscal, basically the fiscal, that is the tax and spending that a government does, and so you control the economy. You know, like many businessmen have said, if I control the money, I don't care what flag or person you get to run the actual economy. But what about the military aspects of Boer independence? Well, the South Africans are renowned in the private security sphere, and there's also tens of thousands of South Africans, specifically Boer Afrikaners, in the military in Great Britain and also in Holland as well, and maybe even some in Germany, of course. Now, if the EU or Americans couldn't give direct support to the Boers because of some problems domestically with keeping the racial power balance in our domestic countries in balance, then of course the South Africans could always go to the Israelis to give them some sort of diplomatic and maybe even military and intelligence help, because they did throughout the apartheid era. That was quite a close relationship, and the Israelis helped build the South Africans' nuclear deterrent, as it was going to be. Now, what could, if in the transition to independence, from autonomy to actual independence as a sovereign state, that is the most difficult and risky part of any plan for independence, because of course then, you know, the curtain comes up over people, from people's eyes, and they see, oh look, the Boers, they're getting away and they've got themselves their own part of land which we would, as Xhosa or Zulu, would claim to be ours. Well, not to go too deep into the cultural and historical aspects, but the Bantu, the Xhosa and the Zulu were only coming down from the north in 1652. At the same time, the Boers were going from the south up to the north. So basically, if anyone owns South Africa in its entirety, it's the Hottentots, and they of course don't exist anymore. But if we take this situation of a plan for Boer independence, then perhaps the Boers should set up or hire such private security companies as Blackwater. Considering the damage the Blackwater did in Iraq, it might be a redeeming thing for Blackwater to take on a job where it would actually be protecting people rather than shooting people. And if Blackwater is seen to be protecting people's families in South Africa, then it would of course avoid the embarrassing problem for the South African ANC government of saying, oh look, these Boers, they're going in an uprising, we've got to do something about it. The Blackwater, with its political connections to the Republican and Democratic parties in the United States, of course gives itself an umbrella of protection from any ANC backlash against that. And of course, if the Boers have diplomatic help from Israel and from the EU and the United States, the EU is not going to allow the ANC government to make it look silly, basically. I think Libya is going to learn this lesson soon itself. Now, as Sudan did, when they tried to exterminate people in one of their provinces and the EU interceded. Now Chad has like 14,000 EU soldiers in it, protecting it from Sudan. So what would the EU do to protect European people, the Boers, who have long-standing cultural links to Holland, to Britain, to Germany, from genocide? Well, things may be going on underneath the scenes that we're not aware of, but we're certainly aware of it from the internet, from things like YouTube, from Euronews, from CNN, from South African news, from even the BBC, and even ITV and Channel 4 in Britain. They're all aware of what's going on to the Boers, and that 3,000 people have been killed since 2000, sometimes entire families. Now I think the Boers have to do something about that, but I think it would take the soft power approach and then get your military in order, and that will give you a much more protected status. And good luck with that. Peace, not war.